It's not showing live over here.
It's showing live on my end.
It's showing live on your end? Okay.
It is.
So, hello, you guys. I'm sorry. On this end, it's not showing live. I don't know. Maybe I'm having technical difficulties right now, but we're going to get the story out regardless. I wanted to introduce to you guys Shawanda Morgan. Her story, well, she's got an amazing story, but her son's story intrigued me so much because I did an interview like this, and it was one of my first interviews I did like this upon first beginning with Lunchtime with Anna. And what took place in the case of her son is just disturbing. And her family, how their world was just flipped upside down. So I'd like to introduce her. Hi, Shawanda, and it is a
Hi.
pleasure to have you here. And I appreciate you taking out of your busy schedule because I know you have a lot going on. So I wanted to start by asking you, who is, well, you know what? Before we do that, we got Demita back on. So I'd like to add her
Okay.
before we get started. Hey, Demita. Nope, she's still having technical difficulties. So go ahead and tell us about what, who is Versace? Who is your son? Who is Versace Evans? And why is it that you're here? If you need a breather from time to time, let me know. But you're pretty straightforward. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me
Of course.
and allowing me to share his story. Versace Evans is my son. He's my only child. He's 24 years old. He turned 24 in August 19th. Versace is a very loving soul. He's always loved family, always been very close to all of his cousins because he was an only child. So any group of friends or any relatives that was there, he was always the protector. Everybody knows him as the big cousin, the protector. And most of his cousins are like his siblings. Very respectful young man. Did really great in school. Um, was on a mentorship program in high school. Um, just an all around good kid. I've never had trouble with Versace's. He's never been in trouble with the law or anything of that nature. Um, just to tell a little bit about him, he has been with the same lady for about 7 years. That was his high school sweetheart, and they started a family together. And so this whole scenario that has happened actually involved the two of them. So it wasn't just him, it was her as well. But he is the one initially that it all fell upon.
Um, he dated this girl, your only
Mm-hmm.
son.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure mothers know sons will always have a special place in their mother's heart.
Right.
Daughters as well, but it's just a connection. But your
Right.
only child. I just, my heart just
Oh
wants to
yeah.
hug you because I get it. I get it from a mother's point of view. Did they have children together?
They do. They have two children together, actually. They have a 5-year-old son and they have a 3-year-old daughter.
Okay.
Their 5-year-old son name is Carter, and my granddaughter's name is Aaliyah.
Okay. Demita, can you hear us now? Are you able to speak?
Yes, I had to drive out of my neighborhood to hear y'all. So I can hear you perfectly clear now. So that's why you see me driving. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So uh Shawanda wanted to make sure that Demita was here. And Demita, you can explain why, um, or what it is that you'd like to say, because I know you're limited on time. And you know, Demita, I just thank you. I really do, as your sister and as a fellow activist. I truly thank you for what you do for these families, because that's what it's about. That's an activist, not just I need cameras, I need to show out,
Right.
whatever. You do it out of passion, and a huge kudos to you, sis. A huge
Same,
kudos.
same to you, and I think you do a lot as well. That's why we clicked. We do a lot together. Like, we
Yeah,
share cases and work together.
we
And
do.
that's what it's about. People get so possessive over people that's doing time. They just want to get out of there. They don't care if Mickey Mouse gets them out. They just want to go home. But
That's right.
this has been a learning experience for me. I'm doing fair. I know you and I talk about this a lot. I didn't have anyone incarcerated. The founder of Freya was a friend of mine. We did date briefly, and we're just friends now. But so I wasn't as in tune with the criminal justice system as I am now, and now I see everything differently. But
Mhm.
Shawanda came when I had been doing fair for a year. I think her mother watched Play Fair Friday, and the time I met her, we had literally just started doing Play Fair Friday. So it might have been our first or second show when her mother saw the podcast. And she reached out to me because I gave my phone number on that show, and she called me. But and I jokingly said this to her at the rally, and I hope I didn't offend her. I said I was about to block her because the way she was telling the story, but I was joking. I would have never blocked her. But the way
Our sense of
it took
humor,
for
huh?
Shawanda, right? It took for Shawanda to call me because with me being a mother and a grandmother, it was kind of like I stay away from child abuse and I stay away from rape. And you and I talked about why on the rape cases, but
Mhm.
it. I'm glad Shawanda came along because I have to think outside of the box on a lot. There's gray areas of a lot of cases. They're not what they seem. So I'm glad she came along because I actually had to hear her out, and she had everything ready for anybody to look at. So she had timestamp photos. And what sold me is that they had the sonogram, and they also had it's a brand new baby. If you're ashamed of that baby, ready to kill the baby, you're not going to take pictures pretty much every day that baby's alive. And
Mhm.
Shawanda had like so many pictures of this baby. Even though the baby was special needs, the baby was full of surrounded by love. So that right there let me know if they did not want this baby, first of all, you had the option to abort. They chose not to. Second of
Mhm.
all, they're taking pictures of this baby like this baby is the next best thing on earth. I mean, she came with so many, I couldn't even look at all of them. I mean, they were great, beautiful pictures, but she had so many pictures. But her point was taken that, what they're punishing my son from, you see from the day she came out the womb to the day he goes to jail. In a 8-week span, you're seeing that the baby was born this way and you're punishing him. And then I believe from before I was able to see the documents, she had told me that he had he had beat all the charges except for one. And then when I see the documents and see it was true, it just broke me down because I'm just like, you just wouldn't accept the fact that he's innocent and you made a mistake. It's all because you had to crank up a jury and he wanted to fight you back and he didn't just let you bully him, that you punish him and you give him 25 years. Like, how can y'all sleep at night?
Absolutely.
And but yeah, and Shawanda is so passionate. It's just everything surrounding this case. It was so hard because once you attach an attorney to a case, everything has to be done through that attorney, and her attorney wasn't cooperating. So it was very hard for me to get information and find out what was going on because she didn't know and he didn't know because the attorney wasn't speaking to them. So that
Mhm.
was hard. So we spent a waiting game for almost a year, and now he's finally going to get a motion filed to retry the case, and that's where we are right now with this.
And so that's why we're here. Mom is smiling because
Right.
hopefully, not even hopefully, we're going to speak it into existence because I
Absolutely.
don't take no for an answer. You know, I'll keep
Right.
knocking on doors. And that's what I love about
No.
Demita. She's got that like me. And Shawanda was just, I mean, I spoke to her yesterday, like pre-interview, and it almost felt like I've known her my whole
Yeah.
entire life. I mean, it
Yeah,
just,
she's
she's
great.
just beautiful,
And
beautiful.
not only is she beautiful, but she articulates very well. Because
Yes,
when she
yes, to
came on, she was
detail.
actually my very first Playfair Friday. Well, we didn't do it on a Friday, but she was my very first episode. We brought mothers who had wrongfully convicted sons on. And the way she painted the picture, you can visualize it. You can visualize everything, and then you can come to the conclusion that, shoot, there might be something on Showa that they're trying to throw on Versace, just from the way she articulated it. And that helps out a lot. Even like there's so much Shawanda could have did with her life. She missed so many callings. No, well, didn't even miss them because she could still do them. But she just articulates so well. And I'm so happy that Versace has a mother like her, because so many
Absolutely.
people are sitting. You and I both know we have people that we're all they have, and they don't like to share us. Like, I have people so many times tell me, but I'm your innocent one. Drop the rest of them. I'm not going to drop them just because, oh, now I met you. No, but she is on it.
I
And when
need
I'm
you.
not
I need
working,
you
like,
more.
let me tell you, I made a petition for him. And next thing I know, I forgot all about that petition. And one day I was trying to make a new petition, and I said, oh, I forgot I made Versace's one. But when I looked at how many signatures, because mom was pushing that petition, you know, what can I say? He has a wonderful mom, and I'm sure he knows.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you.
You're
um,
welcome.
Shawanda. Shawanda, I'm sorry. So Versace has a child.
Mm-hmm.
It was already thought that the child might be special needs. For all who don't know, when you're pregnant, I believe it's your second trimester, I'm not sure, somewhere around there, they give you a test it's a blood test, regular blood test, just to make
Correct.
sure everything's okay with the baby. And sometimes the test comes out, something may be wrong. Some parents opt to still have the child. And I'm very familiar, with this because that happened to me with my son. If I remember correctly, because I was thinking back to that time, I think it was in my second trimester, and they let you know, okay, there's a possibility because nothing's for sure until we see the baby.
Correct.
There's a possibility the child might be special needs. Um, Mom and dad decide we're still having our baby.
Correct.
What happens next?
Well, they decided they were still going to keep the baby regardless of, any issues that she may have. And she was born about 2 to 3 months after that. And she was immediately born with issues. They started out kind of slow, but they progressively got worse. But the main issue was she was having trouble feeding and holding down milk. She would throw up everything and she would literally stop breathing. They actually said it was like her holding her breath as she was feeding. So they wanted to keep a watch on her for that because they thought maybe she would have trouble gaining weight because of that reason. But she was progressing fine, other than the fact that she would choke on her milk and throw up, and she would stop breathing. So several times they would call the doctor and take the baby to the pediatric clinic so that the doctor could observe the baby doing it. And even one time while at home, one night about 9 o'clock that night, the baby did it and she stopped breathing. So they had called 911, and they played the 911 tape in court. You could hear them in panic, trying to get help for their baby because she had stopped breathing.
Mhm.
And there was also something she was having going on with her eye. The pediatric doctor diagnosed it as a sunsetting eye. Um, a lot of people would call it lazy eye. That's sort of how her eye was. And as she started to get a little bit older, she was only 2 months old when this happened, but As she was getting a little bit older, it started to progressively get worse. Like the eye was getting worse as far as setting in the other direction. So, upon one of her wellness checks, which was the last one they actually took her to, their pediatric doctor suggested that there may be something going on with her brain, because usually when you have those type of issues with the eye as it gets worse, that's an indication that something is not signaling from the brain. So she wanted them to take the baby to Choa to have scans and tests be done, because she said she wasn't a neurologist, so she was referring them out, and that's what she did.
Let's go back.
Okay.
So they're taking the baby. Obviously, pediatricians know,
Right.
something's wrong. Um, this baby needs to see a specialist, but I'm just telling you what I see as a professional.
Right.
So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take the baby. In the meantime, are they in shock? Are they, or were they just prepared for all of this due to, remember, a few months back, they're hearing this might be what's going to happen with the child? Were they kind of mentally prepared? Anything can happen, and that's okay. We still love our baby.
Right. They were still in the mindset that whatever happens, we still love our baby. By them thinking she was going to be born with Down syndrome anyway, they were pretty much prepared for whatever came. They just wanted a happy baby. They loved their son. They were going to love their daughter. My son was obsessed with having a daughter. They named her after me. So they were just, they just were loving parents. They didn't care at what state she came. They just loved their baby. And so, with them thinking that she was already going to have Down syndrome, and when she came out, she didn't, they didn't know what would come up later, but they were just prepared for whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They go to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Children's Hospital of Atlanta.
Children's Hospital of Atlanta.
Yes, ma'am.
Once they're there, they're seeing neurology. What happens next?
So the first day they got there, they determined that they would do scans of the brain and pull fluid from the brain. So what they did is went in and did a spinal on my granddaughter to pull fluid from the brain, and they were going to test that fluid to determine what the issue was.
Mm-hmm.
That was done on the very first day that they were there. They admitted her, of course, and they were there that night. And on the very first night they were there, before the surgery took place or anything, before they even got test results back, the very first night they were there, a caseworker was sent to my daughter-in-law's room to speak with her and ask her how did the baby get fluid on her brain, that it was determined that the baby had fluid, and had the baby had any type of injury, because they didn't understand how the baby would have fluid on her brain. And so my daughter-in-law called me while the social worker was in there, and she was like, why are they asking me this stuff? Don't they have the records from the pediatric clinic that we were sent here? And I'm like, well, they should, but just make sure you answer all the questions, because, she was telling her this is protocol. This is just what we do when a baby comes in. And so we didn't think any more of it. And maybe like 2 hours later, my son, who had come back to Spalding County, because we live about an hour and 30 minutes away from that hospital. So he had my 2-year-old grandson up there. They all went up together, but they came back that night so that he could get him in bed, because he was misbehaving and there was nowhere for them to sleep in the hospital. So about 2 hours after I spoke with her, my son called and said, the police just came to our house. And I asked, why did the police come to their house? And he says, well, they said it's protocol that the hospital in Atlanta where our baby is came in, and they, wanted to ask questions, and they wanted to do a welfare check on our other child. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, I told him he could come in. And he said he checked the house and he checked the baby, and he said that it was just protocol. That's what they do anytime when a baby comes in with the unexplained injury. And he said, but it's not an unexplained injury. So why are they labeling it as that? And I said, well, a lot of babies get hurt a lot of the time. So the social worker said it's protocol. I said, just make sure you do everything they tell you to do. And he said, well, he's already gone. He said everything checked out and he left. That was the end of it. The very next day, he got a phone call, and it was from Spalding County DFACS in the county that we live in. And they said they had gotten a referral from Children's Hospital of Atlanta that there was a baby with a possible injury, and they needed to come out to the house to do a welfare check on the other child. So he called me. I got dressed and I met them there. They came in. The social worker checked the house. She checked their refrigerator. She checked the closets where the children's clothes were. She checked adequate bedding in the house. She checked my grandson. She pulled his shirt up, his pants off, checked my son out, everything. And then she was like, basically, I don't even know why we were called, but she said, you guys passed everything. Everything is cleared. So she was like, I know a lot of things are protocol, so don't really worry about it. You know, she said, I was just told to come out. So after she cleared us all, we got in the car, my sister, myself, my son, and my grandson, and we rode up to Choa because the baby was still at the hospital with the baby's mother. So we all rode back up, and upon getting there, they just kept telling us it was a wait, that, you know, they would let us back in a little while, but it was a wait. No one was telling us anything. We stayed down in the lobby in the waiting area literally for over an hour. And then the social worker finally came downstairs, and there was a sheriff officer with her, and they took us in like a conference room. And that's when they told us that she told us that basically no one could explain how the baby had fluid on her brain. Now, at that time, I intervened and I said, well, did you call the pediatric clinic? Because she's the one that sent them here. The day before, she is the one that told them to bring her. And she said, well, we believe there is an injury and no one can explain how it happened. So we're not allowing anyone to go in and see the child. So we were told that we couldn't see my granddaughter. So I understood, me being the grandmother, that they may not let me see her. But my son was there and he was like, am I not allowed to go see my child? And they told him no. And so, of course, we talked back and forth, and she told me that she was going to have us leave, or she was going to have me escorted out, because I had a bunch of questions as to why and what was going on. But they gave us nothing else other than what they believed, what was being investigated, and we were told to leave the hospital. And so at that time, we left. About a day or two later, while her mother was still up there, she called, and she said that someone had called her and told her that she needed to come down to Griffin to answer some questions. And she was like, I don't want to leave my baby up here because no one will be up here with her, but I need to go do whatever they're telling us to do. Well, they hadn't even contacted my son at that time. They contacted him after that. And they told both of them that they needed them to come down to juvenile court in Spalding County to answer some questions. And they did. When we got there, it was them, it was DFACS, it was the judge. And I don't remember if the caseworker from Atlanta was there, because I couldn't tell you who she was from this day to that, because that was the only encounter I had with her telling us to leave the hospital. But they answered all the questions that day in juvenile court. And upon leaving, there was a guy that walked up in plain clothes, no uniform or anything. And he said, we would like to know if you guys would come down to the precinct at the city's office because we have more questions for you. And they both said, sure. And as we were getting ready to get in our vehicles, the officer came over and grabbed my son's arm. And he said, what's going on? And he said, we're going to take you down. So my son's father was like, no, we can take him down. And he said, no, we're going to take him down. And he pulled out handcuffs. And so at that time, we asked him, are they under arrest? And he says, yes. And then another officer went around to the other side of the car to get her. And she just started screaming and crying, like, what's going on? And I said, why are they being arrested? And he's like, for suspicion of child abuse. And they cuffed them both and took them to the precinct in Griffin, Georgia.
So my question is, then after that, who's with the baby in the hospital?
No one.
Wow.
Wow.
Right.
Oh, that just made me so angry. That literally made my blood boil.
Right. So anything could be going down while they causing all this chaos with the family.
They did brain surgery on her and none of us was there. They put a stent in her head. They said to release fluid because there was fluid there. They opened her head up. None of us was there.
Now, this is my question. Has the family to this day had access to the medical records from those procedures that were done without consent?
We don't have any of the medical records. And even when the trial was starting, the attorney was having a hard time getting them to send her everything. And so, I'm not sure if she ever even got everything, but I know she was having a hard time getting a lot of this stuff from them.
There shouldn't be, now that the case was closed, there shouldn't be a hard time. The attorneys should be able to get things when nobody else can. So he or she should have filed an open record request and got everything they needed. But if they're still having trouble on the state level, then you can do a Freedom of Information Act request and make it federal. But with that one, they're going to demand that they release those transcripts.
I think they kept putting her off, and that's the reason why the trial was delayed a few times. But I'm pretty sure she may have had everything by the time the trial started, because she brought up a lot of stuff during trial that we didn't even know. We were sitting in trial like, what? Just according to their records, what they had put down and what she was countering against them.
And this is alleged because, of course, Shawanda hasn't seen any of the records. It's just, through other folks. Right. This is my question to you, because I'm just like baffled. Like, I can't even imagine someone doing anything to any of my kids without my consent. I don't care if they're not married, if they're still mine. You know what I'm saying? And
so, question: did they give consent before all this happened, or were they not even knowing this was going on?
They didn't know what was going on at the time. No.
Wow. That got my blood
boiling. Demita, this is the
interview. Before I got mad, I was trying to make sure.
Yeah. No, when she was told to leave, at that point, everything that they did without consent. Like, we knew nothing. It was so much going on. Like, they did the surgery on her, and defects had come in at that point because they had been arrested and we had bonded them out, so they weren't giving them any information. But they wanted to have two people from the family that would say that they would, I guess, step in and make sure the baby was okay and be an advocate for the baby. So one of the people that they selected was my sister, because she's a nurse. Like, she's an RN, and so Defects had her number and the hospital had her number. And I just remember her calling me one day, hysterical, saying they just called me from CHOA and say they went in there and Aaliyah had turned gray and they had to rush her to ICU.
Yeah. Because my thing is, okay, you're telling me you had to put a stent on there. But how do I know you really put a stent on there? You could tell me anything,
but here's the thing. So they're filing a motion for a retrial. We can't, if the attorney didn't even think to ask the questions that you and I are asking right now, you can't even bring it up. However, and I hate saying things because I don't want people to think I'm negative, but on the flip side, if things don't go well tomorrow and moving forward, this can be new evidence for a habeas. So just keep that in mind. Like, if this doesn't go well, you need, as fast as possible, get those medical records. If you need to call Anna and myself and we can sit and think of all the questions that you need to ask, that'll help you get more information. But like, because you would want to see everything that they did in surgery. You would want to see the stent. You would want to see
nothing blacked out.
Right, what the stent came from, what the side effects are because of the stent, the reason you would put the stent in. I mean, you want to, when you're fighting a case at all, you want to break everything down to the T. Like, and I tell people, don't think no question is stupid, because if you don't ask it now, you can ask it later. So, this medical record will be something new for the for a habeas, if the retrial doesn't go well. So again, like I said, you want to break down every part of that medical record. Did the advocate, you reached out to a family member to be an advocate, Did you get permission from them? What rule do you have that says if the family member is under arrest that you can go forward with doing this? Because there might be a rule at CHOA that was okay. Well, we need to see that that's a rule. What is your procedure? Because now you got the family over here. You didn't reach out to the grandma, the grandfather, great grandmama, aunties, nobody. You just went
No
on in and
one.
did the surgery. So we need to see your hospital protocol on what's the rules for that.
Okay.
So keep that in mind
And
as well.
uh, how are you just gonna just take these steps? Why? Like it just doesn't even make sense. How do we go from, okay, the neurology team should see you, right?
Right.
To this is protocol, this is what we do. And I'll tell you guys, and Shawanda, I can help you a lot because my son is special needs, as everyone knows. So he's seen neurology in the very same hospital with these allegations, and that's never happened to me. We've never been taken to a different area of the hospital. None of that.
Right.
None of that. So it's just something I want you to really think about, just in case things do, like Tamita saying, not go your way. Trust me,
Okay.
you have like 200% of my support, because even I've had to go back and ask for medical records because my son has something going on with his brain that they missed.
Right.
They missed from a very young age. So if something happens, I can't be held accountable. So I wanted to make
Right.
sure those records were on hand, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's that type of thing. It's that type of thing. What happens while he's now arrested? Mom is arrested. Your sister took custody of one of the children, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and where's the other child, with another family member?
Yes, my grandson is with my son's father and his stepmom.
Okay. And what happens then? The kids go to different family members. The family's in total chaos.
Right. Well, we actually wanted them to both be with the same person, but DFACS actually told us that we didn't make that call, that it was
Oh.
them that
What?
made that call. Yes. Yes.
Oh wow. Do they get
Yes.
to see each other? Or is this do they get to see each other?
Actually, they did live right next door to each other. My
Okay.
Oh,
sister just recently moved, but they do keep in touch. So they have weekends together and that type thing. So, yes. And then I get them as well. And I make sure they still have a relationship and know each other. So, yes,
good.
that's been great on that
Wonderful.
end. I think that was the big plus for my family members being the ones to have the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Fortunately
they
for
answering your question, they arrested them, but well, they took them to the city and they booked them both. And we bonded them out. I think we couldn't get them out that day because they didn't even book them basically to the next day. But we got both of them out on bond about a day later, and they were out on bond. We had to get attorneys, of course, because we're gonna fight this. And that's when they tell us, well, they have to be co-defendants, so you have to get separate attorneys. So we did that, and we waited, and maybe like 2 months later, could have been 3 months, but not long after that, they received a letter at their apartment, and we went out there and we got the letter, and it was saying that they were indicted on 8 different counts each. And they were like I mean, most of them were like the same thing but worded differently, but all of it was basically accusing them of abusing the child, abusing the 2-month-old baby. And one of the charges was aggravated battery. So they asked what were they supposed to do. Their attorneys advised them on what date they needed to turn themselves in. Just go turn yourselves in. You're going to have to fight this. And so that's what they did. They both went and surrendered themselves in, and they both stayed in the county jail for about 8-9 months after that.
wow. Um, Trial then comes.
Yes. The trial comes, we're looking at now July 2019. And so when the trial comes, the first thing the DA tried to get the attorney to do is talk them into a plea. So of course, they offered them pleas, stating that, they thought it would be a good idea to take the pleas or they would be facing 180 years each. But neither of them would take a plea because they knew that they were
I'm not
innocent.
taking a plea if I'm innocent.
Right,
Demeter, are you
right.
taking a plea? Shawanda, are
No,
you
not at
taking a
all.
plea? I ain't taking nothing.
Absolutely not.
No.
Neither one of them would take the plea. And so they tried to scare them into it, saying, and the judge actually told them, I was in the courtroom that day, if I convict you, I'm going to give you guys 180 years each. And so
Wow.
everybody got a little shaky at that point. But I asked my son, I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I would never be able to look into my children's eyes and explain to them that I didn't do this. I just said I did it to take lesser time to try to save myself. He said, I have faith that people will hear the evidence and they'll see how I was as a father, who I am as a person, and they don't
Right.
convict me. So I'm just going to fight it. So
Right.
that's what we decided to do. We decided to fight it. So we took it to trial. We asked for the jury.
And I
And
want before you go any further, I'm glad he said that on record. I'm glad he did because that is what they do to all of these cases. I have several cases. I know you have some where they know that they're innocent. They know they had nothing to do, and they'll say, just take 5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll say, well, why would I want to sit in prison for 5 years? First of all, the fact that they did it that low, you're innocent. Then they
Mm-hmm.
come back, you want to fight it. Now, oh, we're going to punish you because you fought it. Now, when we sentence you because I wanted to go on a vacation and I couldn't go, I'm going to give you life in prison. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, how do they sleep? How do they live with themselves at night? I can't even, if I bump into you and you fall down, I feel bad. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
imagine being the reason somebody is spending life in prison.
It's almost like it's a game. Um,
You hit
there
it on
was
the
a
head. It is a game. It is a game.
it
yeah,
absolutely is.
It is a game.
yeah, and the funny thing is, and it's all of them. Like it starts from the lower ones
Hmm.
all the way up to the top. And I'll tell you, I had the case that Demita's aware of, that a special needs adult got tased, really hurt. And the mother asked, so what were you going to do next? Shoot my child? And they said, probably, giggling, like it was a joke. Who does that? Like, what kind of, you must be so fed up with what you do and so fed up with this world that that's just your attitude. That's just my take, though. I
Right.
have too much of a heart. I couldn't even imagine
Right.
somebody telling me that, because I mean, like, who are you talking to? I
Girl,
know you're not talking to me. So,
it's like what you and I were talking about, Anna, about the police officers need to be trained on mental disability and
absolutely.
disabilities and everything because special needs children grow up to be special needs adults. And y'all know I do Uber and Lyft for money. And one day I picked up a man and his special needs son. Now, until the guy got in my car and started eating his ice cream, he just looked like a normal adult to me until I saw him eating his ice cream, and he was eating his ice cream like a 3-year-old would eat their ice cream. Like, they'd be too excited about the ice cream. So at that point, the dad kept saying, "Man, eat your ice cream, eat your ice cream." So I said, "Oh." Then it hit me that he's special needs. But until that happened, just looking at him, he was dressed. The dad had him dressed cool, and he just looked like a normal adult. And then he was tall. So these kids that are growing up to be these special needs children are growing up being hurt by police officers, hurt by their teachers, and teachers should be trained on it, but police officers, they really need to be trained on mental illness, how to deal with someone who has mental illness, and how to deal with someone with physical disabilities, because they're taking lives and they're putting people in prison that that can't defend themselves because of how they were born.
Right.
So
I agree with you, Demita, and that's one of the big things that I fight for, when I fight for these human rights, and especially families that have to deal with things like this, because I know it firsthand. I know it from the other side. I know it from the parent that's actually watching that child grow up and going through the different things. So I get it, you know.
Last
Um,
night I watched it was on Facebook. I watched a video, and maybe you guys can Google it. But it was a dad and a mom lost custody of their kids because the little girl who was 6 had autism. And with autism, usually they have something that they do that's obsessive. But this one, her poo was obsessive. So she would take her poo and pull it out of her panties and throw it. So it was all over the house. So somehow somebody saw this and reported them. Instead of finding out why the poo is like this, they came and the mom was like, we keep her over there because she does it all day and it's hard to control it. So they kept her like off in the back room where she could sling poo. And then when they get tired of it, they go in and they clean the poo. They clean the poo up. So luckily, the police officer had a special needs child and he convinced them to get a mental break and let them take the kids and then get documentation of all this and go back and get them. But he's like, I really believe that you guys could use a break. So it's like, because you go to work and you leave your wife here and she has to deal with this alone. He goes, and same with me and my wife. I'm out fighting crime, but my wife is dealing with our special needs child all day. So he said, take this as a break, clean your house, take a mental break, give it a month. You'll be back in court and get your children back. But we have to lose all of them because of one kid. And he was just like, but it's going to give you a break and they're going to possibly help you deal with this, help you treat her. But it was just the fact that the police officer had a special needs child because the caseworker and the first police officer that came was ready to tase the dad. And, he was aggressive because he was angry and he was just like, we're not abusing our children. This is not our fault. She has autism. It was just a lot to watch. But I was so thankful that that one police officer was in the same situation and he understood, okay, she's autistic. So I believe him. So let me help her.
and see, that's the kind of thing, like Shawanda was saying, what is it that you called it? Sunny for the eye?
Sunsetting eye.
Sunsetting eye. So I actually looked it up. And, it's almost like, how can you guys not know that something was wrong with this child? I mean, and when you're in a teaching hospital, I'll just say that there's just so many things that can go different ways, for so many reasons.
Right.
Like I said, this is the second person that I do. Two different people don't know anything about each other until I actually mentioned to Shawanda yesterday. You wouldn't believe me if I told you one of my first interviews I ever did was on a case very similar. To this day, the mother doesn't have the body of that child. Nobody. Can you just imagine not even being able to bury your child, get that closure of, this is my baby, So she then, okay, so there's trial, there's court. He said, I'm not taking it. What did you feel about the attorney at the time? I don't know if it's the same one. I didn't ask you that before, and I apologize for that. And what is your take on the prosecution team with this case?
Well, it is the same attorney that's doing the motion tomorrow. There were a lot of things that we had given her that we thought could be presented that would help his case. All the timestamp photos, videos. We had active videos. We had family members that had come from out of town to see my granddaughter, and there were many different people holding her and loving on her. So we had so much stuff that wasn't presented in court. And at that time, I thought that she just didn't present that stuff herself. But we later found out that there was a lot of stuff that she wasn't able to present. I don't know how court works, but there was a lot of things that I felt like could have helped. But she wasn't able to present a lot of things. The judge looked at it as hearsay coming from a second party.
right, before you go any further, so what happens is you have preliminary hearings before your actual case. So in
Mhm.
the preliminary hearings, they everybody has to set you have a deadline to submit evidence and everything to them. So it could have been because she didn't meet the deadline, or maybe you gave it to her after the deadline, or if you get in there and the attorney is not the judge is not going to be the one that speaks on. He can't even make a comment. It has to come from the prosecution. So I can say I have this timestamp photo to show you that this is how she came out the womb, and the prosecutor has to say I object because it's hearsay. And then the judge can say sustain. So basically, your prosecutor is the one who's going to say that we don't want this photo in. They have to give their reasons. They can argue it. And if they don't argue it, then they're going to automatically get their way. And I brought that up just to say a lot of people, the first thing they do is they think the judge, but you got to remember the judge is a mediator. Now, the judge is being biased if every time you turn around, he's taking the prosecution side, or if every time you turn around, he's taking the defense side. So just keep that in mind. But the judge can only sit there and listen. That's all he can do, and then give permission. So the judge can't say, "Nah, I don't want that photo in here." If the prosecution didn't argue it, the judge has to allow it. Um, if the
Well, it may
prosecution
have been the prosecution that argued it, but there was a lot of it they would not let her present. They would say something and then he would agree with them, for whatever reasons or whatever, but she wasn't
yeah,
allowed to present a lot of different stuff. In my
so that's
opinion, it would have helped.
yeah. But see, she could have fought it back though. And actually, when that happens, when they won't let your stuff come in, the next part of that is a suppression hearing. That's everything that they took out that could have helped. You have to go back into the court and try to get it in. Like this is the reason why this can actually help him. And they have to retry it. And if she didn't even try to do that, then she didn't put up a fight. His own attorney.
I always felt that way, but because I'm not an attorney, I don't know what they can and can't do. And you have to remember, all of this happened on the heels of me coming out of chemo and radiation with pancreatic cancer. So I was
Mhm.
sick when all of this happened. And
Right.
we had never had to deal with any court cases or any trouble, and we were just thrown into it so fast. So
Yeah.
it was basically like putting our lives in someone else's hand. We really didn't know, we just gave them our truths. We told them everything that we knew, and we just hoped that someone would fight and that they would see, what we were saying was to be true, but it
It
just
didn't
didn't
work
work
out
out
that
for
way.
us. Yeah.
And that's how we all think. It took me to read up on my own, and I just learned how the court system works. Only I've been doing fair for 2 years. I say about 5 months ago is when I learned this part of it. But it just took me to ask now, why is it that he didn't went to his appeal and he didn't had his habeas and he's still in prison? And in 20 years after that, you said, oops, my fault, he's innocent. It took me to see this is why. It's because the preliminaries the preliminaries is almost more important than the trial, because if they don't put up the fight, if they don't do their job in that preliminary, they can mess you up all across the board to where you're sitting there for 30, 40, 50 years. And you're sitting here like, God, I have faith. What happened? It was your own defense and their lack of doing their job that got you there. And people will say, we need to start holding them accountable. Well, in this state right here, they only have to make one argument and they did their job. As long as they make one argument, there's nothing you can do to them.
Right.
It's so deep.
Yeah.
One of the questions that she asked was, how did I feel about it all? And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I just think, and I'm just going to say it, I just think if we would have been our white counterparts, none of that
Oh,
would have gone that way. If we had all of this money and funding behind us to pay for these high dollar lawyers, none of that would have gone that way. But,
right.
we didn't have that kind of money to go get a $50,000 lawyer. I wasn't even working at the time. I was just getting out of bed from being bedridden. So his father actually stepped up and did all he could to get the attorney that we did have so that he
Yeah.
wouldn't have to have a public defender. So,
Because that's even worse. That's
yeah,
Right.
I'd
So they
rather have
work for
yeah,
the
something.
state. You might as
So
well get the baby done.
it was just like we were fighting against the machine with our hands behind our back, because at
Right,
that point, we couldn't go in and make them change anything. We didn't have any more money to get these big attorneys, so we had to work with what we had, and hoping that
right.
that would get the job done. And unfortunately for us, like so many of us, we just weren't given the opportunity to argue our cases the way we needed to be. It was like almost their minds were made up before we ever got there. That's
Oh, it,
exactly
it
how it
definitely it
was.
was
I always
the moment
say
they
that
arrested
with
him, it was
brown
made up.
and black folks, it's almost like you're guilty and you got to prove yourself innocent. It's not
That's
innocent.
exactly the way they were treated the entire time.
Yeah,
And thing is, if they thought they had done anything to abuse the children, the entire time that they were out on bond, they had visitation at DFACS with their children every week.
Hmm.
Every single week. They allowed them to come see the children at DFACS, and they would stand. We knew they were video recording and standing back, and they would see them interact with their children and how loving their children were and all over them. Like, it was so much happened that we don't even know about. Like, one of the original DFACS caseworkers that were on their case, she used to actually tell them, I really don't believe either of you did anything to these babies. She was like, you can tell the way they interact with you guys when we bring them in
right.
from the school, how they do with visitation, how they run to you and love on you. She had that conversation with us. Now, I'm not sure if she talked to some of her coworkers about that or what happened, but believe it or not, they let her go.
Wow.
They let her go while she was working on that case. They let her go and assigned another caseworker to the case. So it's been a lot of stuff that was done that we have no knowledge of what it is because they're not going to tell us, but we've always suspected that there was a lot going on.
Right.
And I will say something, and Demita, I know you can back me up, and Shawanda, I'm sure you know, um, that department in the state of Georgia is a mess, and we
Oh
all
yeah.
know this. So it's very unfortunate that you actually had a good one there, and she gets taken off the case.
They
That's the
terminated her.
system.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the
the
system.
South, the CPS in Georgia, let me tell you, when I first moved here, I, my children's father had to go out of town, and I had to have our baby, my youngest son Darius, and I didn't have nobody, I didn't know anybody in this state, so they came in and convinced me to let defects take them because I had got preeclampsia. I was really sick, and they was like, "Don't worry, as soon as the doctor releases you, you can get your children back." So, no, that didn't happen. When it was time for me and Darius to go home, they came and took Darius from me too. So I'm lost on me, and they're telling me that my child said that their daddy beats me, which was false. And my son doesn't. If this is my oldest son, he didn't remember saying anything like that. He couldn't understand what was going on, but he said that only thing he remember is that the lady just kept saying it. And I said, so they got in there and they saw some cute little kids and they wanted to keep these because my kids were stair steps. So it was like the older kids were like 3, 4, 5. They were bam, bam, bam. So they probably saw some kids that were cute and somebody wanted them kids. So they tried, but I fought. I went in there each time. They told me they made me go through like parenting classes and everything because of what they were saying happened that didn't happen. Then they told me I had to leave my children's father, and that's how we ended up separating because it
Wow.
was like if I stay with you, I'm never gonna get my children back, and all of them weren't his. So I was like, I gotta leave the home. Let's let this die down, and then we'll get back together. But it pushed us further apart. But it was because they were trying to break me. They were trying to catch me slipping. They were trying to see me sneaking over to his house. I stood firm. Whatever they told me to do, I did it. If they say hop on one foot, I hopped on one foot. I did everything. And when I went to court to get the kids back, I told them, I said, I went to relationship counseling, I went to parenting classes, I went to this, I went to that. And they said, oh, you cheated. You did everything back to back to back. And then they said you had to maintain housing for a year. And back then the rent was like 500. So I found me a little $500 a month apartment and I paid it up for a year because I just got my tax refund. They told me I cheated and I went in that courtroom and I snapped. I said, if y'all don't give me my effing kids, I was so mad because I said, my man didn't do nothing to me. Y'all just stole my children and y'all made me do all this stuff and I did it and y'all playing with me. Y'all better give me my kids so I can go back home to Texas. So the judge ended up calling me in her chambers and gave me supervised visits with defects. And I told her the hoe, excuse my language, but this is what I said. I said the hoe can live with me for all I care. Just give me my F kids. And I was just like,
I
but now
know.
when I sit back and now that I'm not 25 years old and I can think, I see what was going on. I said they saw my daughter, my oldest daughter, light skin, long hair. They wanted these children, and somebody probably saw them and was like, I'm gonna take this baby, whatever. Oh, that's just the games they play. And I've heard so many horror stories from people losing their kids over the dumbest. One guy tickled his daughter and not tickled her on her private parts, tickled her, went at a game, like they was at the game and he tickled her stomach and someone told defects and he lost his children.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, it's really crazy because even now with my son's children's mother, she's been out now for a little bit over 2 years,
Right.
and she still does not have her children back. She's done they made her do all different types of classes. She had to get a house and maintain housing and this is fresh out of jail after you've lost everything you had because they had to give up their apartment, their jobs, and everything when they went to jail for those 8, 9
Right.
months. She got out, jumped right back into the game, went and got her a job, got housing, did everything she was supposed to do. And 2 years later, she still doesn't have her children. And even when she was trying to support my son, when everyone was sharing the petition on social media, and she shared his petition, and I don't know if I'm pretty sure they watch her page, but she was
Yeah.
told by one of the caseworkers that if she was going to be supporting him, then she would never get her children back. That she needed not to put anything on social media. She needed not to be involved with any rallies, anything. Just basically just do away with him, like, and that's been the goal the entire time. Because even when they questioned them, Anna, I sent you the paperwork, and Demita, you already had it. One of the things that the lawyer stated on the motion was that the chief of police said, I tried to get him to say that his children's mother did it or his son did it, but he would
Yeah.
not say
Would
that
not
about
say
them. So
it.
they were trying to
I told
coerce
that's
them to turn on each other the entire trial. They tried to do that. And he
right.
kept saying,
And
I wouldn't dare tell a lie on her to get her sent to prison for something that she didn't do. My son
yes.
loved his children. And he
And
told
it when
anybody, if I ever saw her do anything, she would be under prison. But he was like, I'm not going to lie on her.
right. Let me tell you something, Anna. When you read those, girl, get you some tissue. If you drink wine, you're gonna need it. You're gonna need something because for everyone that's listening in, you have to read the documents. When people tell you that they're innocent, when you get those documents, this is what drug me deep into this. When I actually sat down and started reading, and you can, and the stenographer, if they're good, write every little word that you say. And I caught that where the chief of police said, I tried to get him to say, basically, this ain't true. I tried to force him to say it and he just wouldn't say it. And I wish that the attorney would have argued that little part. And I didn't see it if they did, but I didn't catch them arguing that. But right there is like, you're right here in court saying that you tried to force him to lie and he wouldn't lie. Why didn't the attorney attack that right there? Because that was huge right there.
Right.
When
And
I saw that,
I
and
see
neither
something
one of them would,
too.
the mother wouldn't lie on him, he wouldn't lie on the mother. And trust me, I just don't believe. I've never met her. I've only met him through JPay, but I just don't believe that the other one, each one of them would watch the other one abuse the kid and just be down for it. I just don't believe it.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They were both very loving parents. And I try not to cry when I talk about it. The way it tore my family apart. I watched them. They were like the little success story. He was my only child. I was calling her my daughter-in-law even before she was. They had been together 7 years. I had watched them get jobs, and they had their first son. And I was saying, it's too early for y'all to start a family, but they were doing so good. independently with not our, everybody in our family was there for them, but they didn't need anyone. They were doing so good with their babies. And people would see them different places and tell me, oh, I saw your son and his fiance with the kids, and they had walked to the park, or they went shopping, or they were here and the kids were so happy and they're always groomed so pretty and so clean. And that's why I used to post so many pictures of my granddaughter, because I posted both of them, but she was the new baby. And my son was real particular about the way she would dress. So he took pride in dressing his baby and doing her hair and putting bows on her. So I had so many pictures to meet. I sent you so many where I would just put them on Facebook to show my granddaughter off, because they treated her like a princess. She looked like a princess every single day. They
And
used
it's
to
so
see
awesome when
videos
your
all the
grandchildren.
time of the children, my grandson listening to Super Y and dancing to the music, or him and my son in the house wrestling, or running through the house playing, and they had gotten him a puppy and it was his first pet. I mean, to go from that and to know personally, because I was there, a lot of times they would come spend the night with me because I was real sick, and my son was close to me because he was the only child. So they would
Right.
pack up and come spend the night with me. There was a lot of times when I would pack up and I would go to their house, and they would always invite me there, and I would sleep there. And so I was firsthand, there. I was there when they both were born at the hospital. Every single minute they were there. He was in the delivery room with both children. He took pride in being a good dad. And that's what he always said. I'm not going to be a weekend dad. I'm not going to be a part-time dad. I'm going to be a full-time dad to my children. And that's exactly what he was. Countless pictures of them at the park, or out eating, or just doing something with their children. They were dedicated to their children. And basically, that's what it boiled down to. Two young Black children. They didn't know a whole lot because they weren't medical professionals. Even the medical professionals didn't know. So I'm not sure how they were supposed to know.
Right.
But this was their crime. They were a young Black family that wasn't educated in medical things. They didn't know what all was wrong with the baby when she was born. They couldn't know. The
Yeah.
pediatrician didn't even know. She was 2 months old when this happened. two
Right.
months old. So I just feel like they were both railroaded, and their
They
lives
were.
were altered so bad, and their family was completely destroyed, because now she's out and she still don't have their kids, and he's in prison still fighting, and they won't even allow her to support him, and she still loves him. He still loves her. But with everything that is going on and all this trauma, I know things will never be the same. Like this, to see
Absolutely.
them just be this happy family and have it just all together. Like I was so proud of them, to just for them to be ripped apart like that. That's the part that hurts the most. Like,
No, 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 no. We've got to wrap our arms around them when he's out and help them get back on their feet. We can't let the system come in
yeah,
because there's too many single moms. I was a single mom for 17 years, like
Mm.
too many of us out here. And a lot of it, like you said, like me and my, he passed away when my son was 17, but we would have still been together had the system of not broke us up. And that's common. You wouldn't believe how common that is. Um, Not only that, but as a community, the Black, the brown, the Asian, I always say we are all not the majority, but if we come together, if the Asians, the Hispanics, the Arabs, the Black, everybody just come together, we can fight the system that way. But we're
Absolutely.
divided within our communities, and then we're divided against each other.
Each
And
other.
our biggest problem is the people that causing all this, but we won't take time to stop and look at it. If we all come together, because we're affected by the same thing. I have
Mhm.
a guy from India who's in a terrorist camp, and he's proven innocent, but they still got him in a terrorist camp because and I even put his picture up, and I saw not too many people was commenting, and I said, Anna Molly, why did you shave your head? He said, oh, because I'm fasting, I'm trying to give myself to the gods, whatever. But when I put your picture up there, look, everybody, white, Black, whatever, they're looking at you as what the government is looking at you as a terrorist. I put an Asian guy up, tatted all across his neck, seen his documents out of Washington. He's very innocent. But when I put him up, somebody in my comments, oh, you can tell he did it. Wow. Yet Kyle, all his weapons got dropped. Did y'all see that? They dropped 17 years old. Weapon charges got dropped. went across state lines. They said he didn't know what he was doing, but he left the state to go to another state. Now, make Kyle name be Devontae or Jose or Ahmed or something like that,
Or
or he would have
Nathaniel or
the name
Versace.
right, Versace, right.
Yeah.
Everything would be,
Yeah.
everything would stick. His mother said, his mother literally drove him across state lines and said, "Oh, I didn't know he had this big semi-automatic weapon. Now let me take Dimitri, Dominique, or Darius, and they have a water gun under their thing." And I try to say I didn't know it. They was like, "Oh, you knew, and not
You
only did you know,
knew.
you trained
What were you guys
him."
planning on doing? A crime?
Right,
What crime were you guys planning
right.
on doing?
And this
Because
is
that's
the
how it
thing,
is.
like
Mhm.
if they've already got the National Guard ready for his verdict, and we're not even there yet. They're getting the National Guard ready because they're expecting things to pop off. And this we need to pay attention to this. We can't keep being complacent. We can't keep sitting here accepting this, accepting the way they're doing us. Like they play on our lack of knowledge, not our stupidity, because we're not stupid at all. We're not stupid because we don't know the medical profession. I'm not a doctor. I'm not supposed to know it. I'm not stupid because I don't know the law. I'm not an attorney. I don't commit crimes and I don't plan to commit crimes. So why should I know this? But they punish us. They tell you that lack of knowledge is no defense when you go to court. They tell you that. They
Yeah.
play on what they know we don't know. They play on the fact that they know we don't have the money to get a high-powered attorney to tell us every little detail about the law. The more you pay these attorneys, the more they do. The less you pay, the less they do. And we're victims to this. And we're filling up
Abs-
their jails.
Absolutely. And Demita said something, how she invested in books while
Books.
people are spending all their stimulus money out there like crazy. And she gave me a great idea, because there's things that I study. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I read
Mhm.
everything, from A to Z, from the Bible to a
Right.
mystery novel. I read it all. But that's something that I'm going to start doing too, because I want to be able to really dissect things and help people and just even give them seminars. Have Demita there, have Shawanda there, because now Shawanda knows a little bit more about
Oh,
the system
Shawanda's
that
gonna
she
be able to
didn't know.
help a lot of people. I told her, just from me and Versace's conversations on JPay, he's like his mom. He articulates well, and you can hear and see God all through him. You can see God's light all through him, and our trials can be, our tests can be our testimony. What's happening to him, he can now mentor other families, and this is what they did to me. This is what this is what you look out for. This is how you fight back. And
Mhm.
we have to come together and help each other.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Um, Shawanda, so I want to ask you, you responded about the defense side to the prosecution. How do you feel they handled the case?
Again, I think pretty much the prosecution, um, well, let me just say, both lawyers were in agreement with each other. Like her lawyer, even though he was hired to fight for her, he spoke great things about my son that just character witnesses had told him. People had been interviewed. There were so many jurors that we found out later that was taken off of the jury because they were all like, we know this kid, he's a good kid. There's no way we would want to be on a jury. And he got convicted and we were on this jury. So when they would call out the juror's name, they would let them know, we know this kid. I was his basketball coach. We know this kid. He was on a mentorship program with my son. We know this kid. He's a member of our church. That it was so many people that didn't even want to be on the jury because they knew my family, they knew my son, and they knew he would never do anything like that. So they just asked to be excused. We don't want to be on the jury where he would be harmed or hurt, because again, you may have had 2 or 3 black jurors and the rest of them were white jurors. And not saying that's always going to be biased, but the majority of the time it is biased. And that's what we actually ran into several times, where they were arguing. Like, they even, like, during court, there was this one black female juror I remember They kept bringing her out, the prosecution, the DA, and everybody. They brought her out and said she shouldn't be on the jury. She should have been excused at first because she's friend with Versace's brother. And we asked, what? Yeah, she's friend with Versace's brother. And so the judge asked, well, how do you guys know? Well, they're friends on Facebook. They're mutual friends on Facebook. But Versace's was my only child. This was his dad child that lives in an entire new state. And unfortunately, my son had never even met him. Never even known about him or anything. They just knew that they were.
Hey, we all have all kinds of crazy friends that I don't need. Sometimes I got friends that I'm like, what friend?
So let me answer.
They tried to make it seem like my son had a relationship with him, and they did not, because he wasn't I don't think he was a biological, but he was like a step to someone that his dad had dated. But they didn't have a relationship, never. Then they came back after that didn't work, and they tried to have an excuse, and they said, well, she worked at Walmart while Versace's worked at Walmart, because Versace's used to be a buggy boy at Walmart. And then they came back, and the lawyer argued, there's thousands of people that work at Walmart. We went back and pulled every record. They've never even worked the same shift. She was a floor manager. He pushed the buggies. They never even knew each other. And actually, they didn't work there at the same time. Then they came back a third time while we sitting in court. These are all different days now. And they came back and they said, well, we found out she no longer lives in Spalding County. She's moved to Fayetteville. So she shouldn't have been on the jury anyway. Well, they went and did research. It wasn't even her. She has a twin sister. It was her twin sister that lived in Fayetteville, and she still stayed in Spalding. And what we found out at the very end is the reason why they were trying to get her thrown off the jury is because there was her and this one other lady that was keeping them from giving a guilty verdict. And every day they would just say, no, we don't see it. You don't have enough evidence. So they came out several times. What do you call the juror? The lady that speaks, is it the foreman?
Foreman.
She came out a couple of different times, her and another person, 3 different times, and tried to get that particular juror removed. And then the judge asked her on the 4th time, why was it this same particular juror? And she said, well, she just won't listen, and she's just stubborn headed, and she won't agree. And the judge said, well, she's doing her job. She's not supposed to agree with the majority because it's the majority. She's supposed to see whether or not there's evidence, circumstantial or physical. He said, so she's doing her job, so I'm going to allow her to stay on the jury. So they never could get her dismissed. And at the very end, of course, she didn't even know anything about it, but there was her, and I guess she ended up like it was her and another juror. And then I guess once another juror heard why they didn't think he was guilty, that juror got on board. And so now you have a hung jury. And the judge said on 2 different days, because it was a 4-day trial, I would not accept a hung jury or a mistrial. You guys go back and you guys deliberate and bring me a verdict. And I remember on that Thursday, because I wasn't allowed in the courtroom on that Tuesday and Wednesday because I was a character witness for my son. So I couldn't come in until the day that I actually had to testify, which was the 3rd day. And after I testified, I was allowed to sit in the courtroom. And in front of everybody, the jurors, the lawyers, and everybody, when they came out with that hung jury, he told them that he wanted them to go back in there. He said, it's late today. It was almost like 5 o'clock. He said, we're going to go ahead and dismiss and come back tomorrow. And I need for you guys to come in here prepared because I'm going to be leaving at 1, going on vacation. And I need this done before I leave. That is what and I've never heard anything like that before in my life. Once everything was over, there was 4 jurors that came from the back. Everybody else was just trying to get out of the courtroom quick. The jurors, they came in there and sat with my family, and they cried with us because they kept saying, we just don't believe he was guilty.
Wow.
So I'm assuming that's going to be their angle for the retrial is the jury, whatever the jury documents are, because that would be a good, everything that was happening with that jury and plus what the judge was saying should grant him a retrial when they file the motion tomorrow. But to answer your question, Anna, about the prosecution, I'm going to say they did a great job. The prosecution, not because, and I'm just going to sound crazy. Keep in mind, the prosecutor's job is to prosecute, and they did everything they could to get that prosecution. So as far as what their job description is, they did a good job because they dug deep on that jury pool. And some of these prosecutors, I wish they were defense attorneys because they find things out. They'll go into your ancestry.com. They'll do whatever they got to do to get what they need to get that win.
Mhm.
'Cause I don't know how going through social media to find a third cousin and all that stuff. I'm sitting here like they was not playing.
That brother of a no
They
related third cousin of the
right, like Versace didn't
worked
even
at
know that.
Walmart twin
Right, Versace didn't
sister.
even know that was. Dang, I didn't even know we were related, but you found out. So I'm gonna say they did their job.
Yeah.
Um, goodness, but yeah, but good job on the defense for fighting that back. Because wow, 'cause they was not. Goodness, they was digging. They was
Absolutely. Now my question to you, because I asked all of that to say, in your opinion, do you think justice was served?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. I
Can you
think this was
elaborate?
a total miscarriage of justice. There's an innocent young man who's lost almost 3 years of his life, sitting in a jail cell, waiting to come back to court, trying to prove his innocence. They looked at my son, and people not ever knowing my son a day in their life. You had all these character witnesses, hers and his. They all said good things about them both. Even when hers was up there on her behalf, they still spoke on what a good dad my son was. Um, the pediatrician. The pediatrician spoke, they had a representative on at the courthouse, and they were on trial. And they said, well, if we thought anything was wrong with the baby had had every wellness check that she was supposed to have. On that last wellness check, we had concern because of her eye. That's why we sent her. The testimony was, if we thought or if we saw any injury to that child, we would have never put that child back in their custody. We would have called the ambulance to send the baby up to Atlanta, and we would have called the police on them. There was no emergency at the time when that baby left his doctor's office. I even
right,
had pictures of my granddaughter when she arrived at Elbiston, because they FaceTimed me, and I was screenshotting her because she was laughing and they had her shirt off. And I was just taking pictures of her and my grandson running around. And the only reason we got off because she said, okay, he's in here. He's about to do the spinal. And in one of the pictures, the guy who was about to do the spinal is in the picture that I have. So no, I feel like it was a total misjustice. I feel like they've taken their lives. I feel like their names have been slandered. They've broken their relationships with their children.
right,
With everything that my son has had to go through, being in prison, never been in trouble ever before, not even juvenile, and going from a county jail to a diagnostic prison, and then another prison, and then another prison. I can't even count on both my hands how many days I've gotten calls talking about um, all the things that go on in prison, from the fights and not sleeping at night, or being advised to sleep in your shoes because this is what go on. It's wars going on in prison, or someone attempting to stab him because some kind of way, and he still thinks that an officer gave one of the inmates his charges because the guy, left and went to another side of a dorm, and when he came back, he knew what my son's charges were. And he threw that up at my son, and then he tried to attack my son with a shank. And luckily, and he actually hit him in the chest with the shank, trying to stab him in the heart, but it didn't penetrate. But there was so much stuff that he's gone through and had to endure and see murders and hearing people screaming, getting killed, and being on lockdown for months at a time where there's a murder there, and I can't even call the jail to find out what's going on. And I'm worried sick with no information. I'm calling, begging him to do welfare checks because this is his first time being in any trouble. So he was handling it just like I was. I was his sounding board. He would call and vent to me, and we would have to pray. And my whole thing has just been faith, 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 keep the faith. But I'm telling a young man to keep faith I'm telling him to keep faith in God. But he's looking at it like I have no faith in this system. So even if we're believing, if the system wants to keep me here, then this is what it's going to be. I've watched him lose all hope. I've prayed him through that. I've watched him be depressed because he doesn't have his children. I've tried to pray him through that. I'm watching him say his years are passing by, and there was so much stuff he wanted to do by now. And he's like, whenever I do come home, it's going to be starting all over. My bond that I had with my children, because he was so close to both of his children, with his son especially, because his daughter was only 2 months old, so that bond didn't even fully develop.
Right.
So no, I think they were totally did wrong. I think
Yeah.
everything they did was wrong. I really don't believe we were ever given the proper trial. I believe, like again, she said the prosecution did their job. They went in with the mindset he's guilty, and whatever we can say to make him be guilty, he's going to be guilty. Their
Right.
argument was my son was more likely, not that he injured that baby, not that they found any bruises, because they didn't. The baby had no bruises, no anything. They said he would have been more likely, because they did come out and say the baby had all these different injuries. They named all this different medical stuff in court that none of us knew what it meant. We had never heard any of that before. And when the lawyers argued, well, what happened to these injuries? Because this baby wasn't like this before she left. They said, well, oh, the injuries have healed. They most likely have healed. She said the baby's 2 months old when all of this happened. There's no way she could have been injured and healed. And why don't we have pictures of the baby if this is what you're arguing? They didn't have any pictures of the baby. They typed in words, what the stuff meant, and pulled stuff off of the internet, which was just paper. They had 5 different doctors that came in, and everyone argued and said that they couldn't rule it as child abuse. And then even the doctor they brought in from the state, if you look at the paperwork, you both have it. He says he cannot rule it as child abuse. It could have been where the child was held and someone's hand was placed on her wrong. It could have been where she was thrust in the back when she was choking and EMS came and 911 took her to the hospital.
Right.
But no one even seen an injury on this child. The argument was in court until 14 days after she entered the hospital. 14 days after she was there.
Wow.
In your opinion, do you believe there was medical malpractice and a
I
cover-up?
absolutely do. I have always felt that way. But
Yeah.
because we weren't allowed to be there, we don't know. Because it's now a defects case and they're over both of my grandkids, I'm not allowed to get records. I'm not allowed to call and get certain stuff. Even their parents aren't allowed. The custodial people are, but they put pressure on them because these are the people with the children. So the state even tried to call in my sister as a witness because she has my granddaughter. And like she told them, I saw this baby on a regular. I see no injury to this child ever until after she came out of the hospital when she came in my custody. But we couldn't use her as our witness because the state called her because she had custody of my granddaughter.
Wow. And the state can be some bullies too, because they'll come get you if you don't lie on Shawanda, Anna. If you don't lie on Shawanda, then we're gonna take Nathaniel and put him in a home so
Yeah.
far away from you. And I mean, they do all kinds of dirty things. They prey on your weakness. But when
My
you show
Absolutely.
sister
them
had
that you
talked
are not
to
scared, when you show them you're not scared, boy, they don't like that.
my sister had originally talked to our attorney, and she was telling her about how they called her and she went up there and they told her that the baby, they had found the baby gray and they had to run put the baby in ICU and da da da. She told them all of that. She was going to be a witness for my son, and then the state subpoenaed her. And once
Yeah.
the state subpoenaed her, she couldn't testify for us.
Yeah, that was they knew she wasn't going to talk to them. They didn't want her because she's a nurse. She's an RN at that. RN is right by the doctor, so they know. We have
Right.
other cases where medical stuff is dealt, and I said you have to. I said, man, it's so sad we have to do this, but you gotta. I'm not a nurse or LPN, not even a CNA, so I don't know other than things that they've done to me. I said, but you have to get in there and start with the IV and work your way up to the process of what they would have done to deal with this and what does this medicine do? And you have to break it down to a science when you fight them back because to get you, they're gonna do everything they can to get you and to keep you. And
I,
most of it,
I agree.
huh?
I agree. I agree
Yeah,
with you, Demita. And it's very unfortunate because he sounds, to me, without meeting him, like just a wonderful soul. And kudos to you, Mom, because obviously you raised an outstanding man. Because I
Yes.
still can't get over the doing her hair. Do you know how many
Right.
guys will not touch their daughter's hairs because they're like, too
Right.
much for me, too much for me. You know, they're like, no. And then your daughters have all this mess when dad has them, and you're like, I mean, it's not hard. Just you know.
You know,
I'm
actually,
still like on that, huh?
all the pictures that I was able to send to Miss Demita, the majority of those pictures I got out of my messenger from my son. Like
Oh,
he would fix her up and put her little headbands on and her little matching blue jean jacket, and he would send a message and be like, "Don't play with her." You know, it would just be something every day, or them taking selfies, or he
yeah.
loved his children. He loved his children, but he was real overprotective of that girl because I had asked several times, "When are you gonna let me take her home?" And he was like, "No, no, no, she's too young. You're gonna have to wait till she's at least 6 months
That's
old." And I
my
was like,
baby.
"Okay."
That's my
Okay.
baby.
You know,
Yeah.
like kids are funny because they act like you didn't give birth to them. My daughter
Right.
was like that. She'll call me. I'll have my grandbabies, and she'll say, did you do this?" No, I didn't. I'm just letting her sit here and filth and starve. I didn't do anything. Now I raised 5 of y'all, but I forgot in 11 years how to take care of a kid.
Right.
You guys, if you guys think I was an awesome mom, wait till I have my grandbabies. I'm really gonna be all over them. I'm gonna be like, I want to borrow them.
Right.
Right.
Let me have them, but then they got to take
Right.
them.
Yeah, that's the blessing. You can send them back. Okay, pack your stuff. You going home? Like you missed them, but you can take them back. Okay, that's enough. I need my sleep now.
No,
Go
I'm
home.
tired. I'm old.
Right.
My grandkids has been my saving grace because I was so depressed. Versace's again is my only child, and we were really, really, really close. Always really close. Like we literally, even like when he first moved out, I probably cried for 2 months because I had separation anxiety. We had never been apart from each other. And I was
Right.
like, well, I have to let him live his own life now. And I was so happy for him, but I missed him. So we literally, again, we talked on the phone every day. If I hadn't seen them in 2 days, I'm on the way to your house or they're on the way to mine. I would call and say, hey, I cooked such and such, so y'all don't have to cook today, just to get them to the house. Or they would call me and he would be like, well, Takia cooked, so you don't have to cook today, just rest. So we were extremely close. So I just became really, really, really depressed, because I felt like maybe I didn't help him enough. Maybe I didn't have enough money to go get these big lawyers that could have fought for him harder. Maybe I didn't get enough people to listen to his story. I always felt like I didn't do enough. And I used to be just so depressed and so sad. And my grandkids were my saving grace because, just having them, it was always like I have a part of him here with me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and let me tell you, it's so sad that the public defender and a high-powered attorney practices the same law. So why are there price differences? And that's why, because I'm not going to tell you this. I remember on a case, they had literally just got indicted. And I said, when did you get indicted? And he said, yesterday. And I said, okay, email your attorney and tell him to get the meeting of the grand jury minutes and your bill of particulate. And the attorney emailed back and said, there's no such thing. And I said, So I went into the Georgia State Law book and I sent him a copy to give to his attorney of both and then I sent him a case example of how you use it in court and shot it to him. And he called me back. He said, Miss Demita, they asked me, am I getting advice from another attorney? And I said, see, I'm just reading, and I probably didn't pay as much for my law book as they did. But I said, I'm just reading the exact same law, the Georgia codes and statute. Mine is LexisNexis. And, it's just right there. I said, you need to have one too. I said, even if you get the $20 law book, most of the laws are going to be the same thing. Just get you a law book and be sitting there even question me because I'm not an attorney. So when I tell you something, go back and read it and verify it because maybe I did misinterpret it. Maybe I read it the wrong way or it's not applied to your case, but you can find the right answer. But more minds working together, the better.
So what did they end up doing with him? Did the attorney follow what you said?
Well, now on that case right there, so the bill of particulars, I knew we wasn't going to do it because it was in federal cases, They feel like the discovery is so detailed, they don't have to give you your bill of particulars, and they're going to always win that argument. But the fact that you ask for it helps you in your appeals court, because that means you're questioning your own indictment. Like, I'm innocent, I didn't do this. Let me see the minutes of the grand jury minute. I need to see how you came up with this. And then I always tell them to make sure you cite that the grand jury is just regular people like us. The grand jury sounds fancy, but it's really just voters like the jury pool. It's the same people.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
they can say, Anna, you're going to be on the grand jury today, and you've never been to law school or nothing. And then it's the prosecutor coming in saying Versace Evans beat his child to the point where blah, blah, blah. And they got you in there crying. And then they say, now, who thinks he's guilty? And you're crying because you're pissed off and you raise your hand. That's the grand jury right there. That's how they work. So you have to say, let me get the minutes of the meeting. Let me see what you said to entice this jury who doesn't know the law to say I'm guilty and give you all 30 of these charges when all I did was steal a piece of gum at the grocery store. So you have to question everything they do, and you have to, because like I said, if you don't question it now, if you lose in court, you cannot question it in the appeal phase. So, when like I tell both of you, when attorneys go to their client and say, well, Demita's not an attorney, my answer is always, of course I'm not, but I don't have to be an attorney to read the Georgia. I mean, I got mine off Amazon. So I got it off Amazon. So I don't have to be an attorney to read it. Amazon didn't say, Demita, are you an attorney before you pay for this book? No, I said I need Georgia state code and statute, and I need Georgia case law, and I need federal and all the other states I got. And as long as I paid them their money, they sent me the book.
There you
And
go.
then I tell them, I said, but ask your attorneys, am I wrong about the law that I stated, though? Because they don't never want to talk to me, because when they do, I act like I'm I play one on TV. I act like I'm an attorney.
And she puts them on trial. She puts them on trial.
I get ready for my sit up straight, and I go toe to toe with them. They look at me like, who are you? Then they'll say, well, they weren't acting like this until you came along, because they didn't know until I came along. That's
Right.
why.
Right.
And that's good, because that's what we
yeah.
want. That's what we want.
Right.
That's what we want to get with all of our clients.
Yeah.
And now, Shawanda, my question to you is, trial starts tomorrow, is that correct?
The motion for trial starts tomorrow.
Motion for trial. I'm sorry. I'm asking you, lunchtime with Anna, Demita's asking you, Shawanda's asking each of you, please, if at all possible, I can't travel out of state due to some health conditions. So I'm kind of stuck right now, but I'm there with heart and with prayer. You best believe I'm praying, and I'll be in fasting for you as well as your family. What I want from the listening audience is, if you can, drive near Griffin, just drop in.
Mm-hmm.
Drop in, just show mom support. Just even a thumbs up. I'm here. That's it.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm gonna go against the grain. Tomorrow that can be it. But normally when you're going through the trial process, you don't want to just drop in. Everybody wants to have a pencil and paper, and you want to write down every little thing, because while I'm writing, Shawanda might catch something I'm missing because I'm writing. And Anna might catch something me and Shawanda missed. And the reason why you want to do this is because we are at the internet age, and you can go Google the motion that they just filed, Georgia State Code Motion 26A, and it'll tell you what it is. And why did they file that? You want to know every little detail, because it takes an army. If you're not in that courtroom with them, I understand that, when I say, hey, we got Versace tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I know we're not going to get a lot of people, but if you're off tomorrow, hey, let me go protect my friend Versace. Let me go. I'm not doing anything. Let me go, sit with Fair and, assist with this Versace Evans case. Let me see what's going on. You don't even have to agree with me when I invite you. You could think that Versace did it. Just come and see. Just come and see, because when you get there and you hear the details for yourself, you'll know that the news lied, and you'll know that the prosecution is lying, and that indictment is bogus. But you're not going to know any of that if you're at home not paying attention. All you know is that Versace's got arrested and he has trial today. And then when the news come out in the trial of Versace Evans guilty, your mind automatically thinks he was guilty because you wasn't there, you don't know the truth. And we have all these people sitting in prison telling us that they were innocent. I promise you they are. Because most guilty people in prison, they go ahead and process the fact that this is now my life.
Yeah.
They process.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that, like, you really want to do more than just come. The sentencing you can just, but for the trial phase, you want to write and you want to take notes. Wait, what law did he say? What happened? Oh, wait a minute. She said he jumped 3 times. She said he didn't jump at all. Which happened? So you'll catch in the lies. You'll catch everything that they try to hide from you. So,
And I always say, they tell you, make sure your device is off, right? Turn off all notifications on your device. There's so many recording apps that nothing says you can't. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Anna's really sneaky.
That's right.
It's gonna be that easy for you, So that's just me understanding. I'm just saying.
Right. And if now in the federal court, they're gonna take your phone at the door. In the federal, when I go to federal court, I can only take my ID. But in the state court, you can take your phone in. But all they ask you to do is turn the volume off. That's all they do. They say make sure your devices are shut off because they don't want your phone ringing while they're trying to hear too. So just keep that little in mind, take with that information what you want to take.
Some little pointers from someone else.
Were you able to get a link for trial, Shawanda?
No one would respond to me when I kept calling the courthouse. So I couldn't get a link. But when I talked to the attorney today, she did say that she think it's going to start at 9:30, but I'm going to be there at 9. So if there is a link that I can actually get physically from them, then I'll put it up on my social media. So they'll be able to follow along on tomorrow.
Okay, great. And I'll be there virtually.
So much has changed because. Okay.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying so much has changed because we were told that he would be there. And then as of today, he called and he was like, they still have not moved me. So we had to call his attorney back and she was upset because she said, I was told he would be there. He needs to be there. So then she had to call the DA office and she kind of got a runaround. And so she didn't get a straight answer. It was one of those, we'll call you back. And so she came back and she said, Ms. Morgan, they may not bring him. She said, they were supposed to have him here, but she said, they may do it virtually. And she said, so, we're just going to take what we can get at this point because we didn't want to do virtual last time when we put it off and it took this long. So we're just going to go with it.
Okay.
So I said, well, we can be there, correct? And she said, yes, you sure can be there. And she said that it would be one or two things. The motion that she filed was to ask the judge to either give him a retrial to start the process over or to act as 13th juror and he could totally overturn the verdict. So she was like, he has the power to set him free on tomorrow. But she did say that if it didn't go in our favor, we would have to get another attorney to do the appellate and it would have to be public defender. And I had never heard of that, but she said it would have to be a public defender. That's how it works. And that really, I'm not going to even think about that though. I'm going to keep my faith up.
I'm definitely going to check on that tomorrow. Anna, do you know if that's true or not?
I don't know anything about that. I've never heard of that. Like I always think if you have a personal attorney, it's a personal attorney.
Yeah, that's me too.
Right.
That's what I've always said.
Versace will be my first retrial if he's granted a retrial. So I don't know much about it. Like when you told me that you thought it was the retrial, I started researching retrial on that day because almost everybody I have is either before the conviction or their appeal or habeas. This is the first time that I've actually on board when somebody they have a retrial. So
I'm going to look that up as well, Demita, for you and as well for you, Shawanda. Sometimes I get lucky because some people just like to look. I look when I'm searching for it. I'm like an investigator. I'm like, I'm going to find it, So we'll make sure that
to see. Do you have attorneys following you too? Because I'll put a post up and one of the attorneys will comment and say nah or yes or whatever. But I'm gonna talk to attorneys and ask them if on
Okay.
a retrial if he has to use a public defender, because that just doesn't make sense to me.
It
Right.
really doesn't, because I mean, for a public defender to be involved, to me, it's just might as well just throw away the key, because
Right.
they,
That,
You might as well
that's
let
how
him.
I feel about it as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Ask him, can Tanaya represent him? Because that's how I feel
He's
about
better off defending himself and having
it.
me
Right.
do than you there.
Get
We're
the
not
dog. Let's get the
attorneys.
dog to defend them. Like you're better off letting the goldfish defend them. Like
I didn't
anybody.
want a public defender for the first trial, so surely I
Right.
don't want one for the retrial.
No.
And one
Absolutely.
thing that she did say is that basically, if certain things weren't presented in the first trial, they won't be allowed in the second trial. Now, since all of this happened, my son has been sitting in prison for 2.5 years, and my granddaughter has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She has
However, that was my
seizures,
next
all of this
question to
stuff.
you.
So my question would be, is that something they can even take before the judge this time, to show him that this is what this baby has going on? It's just so
They
much that has
they
happened since
can't.
then that we know, like we know we're being railroaded. Clearly we
Now keep
know.
in mind you cannot bring anything new to this trial, even if he's granted a retrial. You can't even bring that information into the into the appeal. But for the habeas, that's new evidence. So if any of the symptoms match the symptoms for cerebral palsy, just start getting his bed ready. He's coming home.
And which in actuality, I am familiar with, I have medical background as well. So fortunately, along with me having a disabled child, a lot of the things that what you mentioned, I was going to tell you, and that's why that was going to be my next question to you about the CP. It does connect to that, because normally what happens with CP most of the time, not always, but most of the time, it's a mistake that was done in the hospital during delivery. So then from there, you have all these other effects. Their little brain is forming. So they have all kinds of issues going on. And it's probably, yes, they're swelling because this just happened. You're talking about an 8-week-old baby. So,
Yeah.
you got to look at it from that perspective, because, and like I said, uh, I always tell people, doctors don't know. They just study medicine. They never know. So what a doctor might be able to diagnose Demita with or Shawanda with, he might totally miss with me because I have off symptoms, but I have the same thing that they have, the same diagnosis that they have. You see what I'm saying? So it just all depends, and that's why it's studied. They never really do know. And that's why
And
you got
I'm not
to
going to put our personal business out there, but Anna and I, we did that the other day. Now we both suffered from the same thing, but her symptoms were slightly different than mine. But yet we were told we had the exact same thing. And so, yeah, it's just a
absolutely.
guesstimate when you go to the doctor. They say, now what's happening? What's going on? But it makes sense, Anna, if you ask that question. I've seen this is how God works. When Shawanda told me at the rally that the baby was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, I got in my car and there was a commercial that said, "Was your child born with cerebral palsy? A malpractice suit can be in your thing." And I was just thinking, when you just said that, I said, that's why I heard that. So now my brain is thinking, let's tell one of these doctors, yes, the baby was. If let's say he doesn't win, let's go to one of these doctors and see what they can do, because obviously they found a way to win this malpractice suit. So if they can line up everything that they look for to support the case, that might be what he's in prison for. And they could be like,
Right.
no, no. So you when you're fighting for yourself, you have to think outside the box, and you got to use every little detail that you can to fight them back. This system is so wicked. It's so wicked.
Oh yeah.
And absolutely it is. And I'm gonna get you, which I'm sure you've already done, Shonda, anyway, but if you like, I'll get you from my medical books, because I never got rid of my medical books information, because it gets a little bit more detailed in those
Yeah,
books.
I'm gonna have to cut it short because my son had to take Tanaya for me, and it's time to go get her. But
Okay.
thank you guys for having me on with you
Okay.
today. And Shawana, I'll see you at court tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Demita. Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye. So I wanted to ask you, Shawanda, um, her diagnosis was CP. Does
Mhm.
that make you feel like our Father is opening doors? Because I know spiritually you stand where I stand, right? Does that make you feel like he's opening doors to say, it really wasn't my son, it really wasn't my daughter-in-law, they're excellent parents, and we need their name cleared out?
Absolutely. It has always been my prayer for God to reveal the truth. For God to reveal the truth. That has always been my prayer. And even though it came almost a year and a half, close to 2 years after that, I just always felt like God has never failed me. God has
Yeah.
never failed me. So I felt like something would happen, something would come about. I didn't know when, but I just felt like I always felt like something would happen where they were going to have to look deeper, or something else would come up where they would actually see that it wasn't abuse. And every time I would pray, I would see all these different stories of people that's been convicted before with no evidence and no witnesses, and they spend 20 years in prison before they exonerate them and say, oh, we made a mistake. And they end up getting out because they didn't look deeper to find out that the child had issues beforehand. So now when these other things come about, they don't know what they are. They didn't diagnose them prior, so they just automatically think, oh, abuse. But you
Mhm.
have too many people. I've researched, I've read, you have too many people that have been thrown in prison for shaken baby syndrome or this or that, saying they did something to kids and they find out later that they didn't. I mean, I'm still baffled at how my granddaughter would have been abused with no injuries, no bruises, no anything. And at the time, my son was 230 pounds. My granddaughter is bright. So any scar, any bruise, or anything on her would have been noticed immediately. Nothing that could have been hidden. The pediatrician at her wellness check, when the baby's young, they take their diaper off and they take their clothes off and they pull their little legs and they work their little legs around in their arms and they pull them by their arms and let them sit up and see how their head, like all of that was done the day before this baby went to CHOA. All of that was done the day before, but they said these were older injuries that may have been there but had healed, but they couldn't give us any bruising,
So
any
it couldn't have
charts.
been at birth.
It
It
could
couldn't
have
have
been.
been at birth, right? That's what they're saying because it's an older injury. See what I'm saying?
Right.
It makes no sense to me. It's
It's
sad.
been mind blowing. It's been truly mind blowing because I always thought that, and believe me, I love children. And if there was any time in the back of my mind, at any time I thought anything had been done to my granddaughter, they wouldn't have had to do anything to them. I would have been the first one to get them.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was
Hmm.
never any doubt. All of us had been around that baby, if not every day, every other day. Again, my father, my stepmom, and my sisters and brothers had just came down from North Carolina a week before that. Um, I sent Demita some other pictures of his attorney having. We're all playing with the baby. Everyone's loving on her and passing her around, and she's just jolly and happy. And that was one of the things that is on the paperwork that you have. And one of the things that the lawyer argued and the doctor, this baby wasn't injured. This baby wasn't in any distress. There's no way this baby could have had any injury like you're saying she had recovered from and be this happy and smiling and not crying and be in distress. There's just absolutely no way. And I've been
Absolutely.
mind blown the entire time because it was always, well, Lord, I can only pray and ask you to vindicate them and to show people what need to be seen because they won't give me a file. None of us was there the 13 or 14 days she was in CHOA by herself. None of us was available for surgery. We're just in the dark.
Um, Shawanda, you're my hero because I just can't imagine the strength that I took I would have been like, what was that movie, John Q, breaking down. I mean, I would have been like, I don't know what I would have done.
I've felt that way many days. And those are the days when I have to pray the hardest. Those are the
Amen.
days when I have to warfare the hardest. And I've been trying to be positive because even when my son would call me breaking down, I would have to be strong for him. I would hear him and the distress he was in and hear whatever was going on. But I know who I raised, one. And I know he has the
Mhm.
fear of God in him. And I knew that if I didn't show the faith that I speak about, then he
Amen.
wouldn't have that faith that I've been teaching him about his entire life. So my job was to rely on God to give that strength to me and for me to pass it on to him, because without that strength and the foundation of faith, we wouldn't have made it through any of this. We still have an uphill battle, but we wouldn't have made it through all of this if it wasn't for God just keeping us strong, for strengthening us and renewing strength, because up until now, we had no one on our side. When people would hear about the case, they wouldn't care to ask, can we see the transcripts? Or can we see the motion from the lawyer? Can we see what's going on? They would hear, baby, they said you did, so you did it. I mean, the day that it happened, when they convicted him that day, the DA stood up and she said, this is a monster. I want the jury to take a look at this monster. Now, every character witness and everyone that knew him said something different. She never met my son a day in his life. And she said, he's unemotional and he's sitting there looking all da 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 da. And he probably just got fed up. And one day he just broke and the baby was crying. Picture the scenario, the baby crying, and he just got fed up and he injured the baby. But my son was sitting there looking at us like, this is crazy. And one of the things he tried to say, but he had to be quiet. They wouldn't let him talk. But I have a 2-year-old that's running around tearing up the house. My 2-month-old eats and goes to sleep. She's not an issue at all. So why would I hurt my baby? And the reason why he wasn't getting emotional and making outbursts is because that's what his lawyer had advised him to do. She said, they'll say stuff and they'll try to make you mad and they'll say bad stuff about you and get up under your skin. She said, try not to make any outbursts because the jury is going to watch that. He did exactly as he was advised to do. And they demonized my son on that stand. And they created a narrative that never happened. And they said things about him that have never happened. It went from both of you did something to, okay, we beat out, because they had 8 charges each. They beat every charge because the jury could not find where they had ever abused him, mistreated him, talked to him ugly or anything. It came down to one charge that was either going to be, the judge said, him or her, because they said that the baby had a hairline fracture to her rib. And I'll go back to reiterate what the state doctor himself said that injury could have came from. They didn't know the baby had an injury. The pediatrician didn't even know. Surely they weren't going to know. But because they could not explain how that baby got that injury, that was going to stick. That charge was going to stick, which was an aggravated battery. And that was her argument, that the mom worked more hours than my son. He was home the most. Statistically speaking, which is exactly what she said, men are more likely to commit the crimes of child abuse. He had more time to do it. That was her only argument. No bruises, no evidence, no witnesses. They convicted my son with the aggravated battery, and the judge gave him 20 years with 12 to serve. And my heart fell in my stomach because there's no way I thought we would ever have him convicted. He didn't take a plea. He fought for his life, even knowing he could be facing 180 years. He fought. And he felt, surely the system won't convict me, knowing that there's no evidence. My baby don't have any bruises. No one has ever seen any bruises, not even the doctor that's been treating her. And she's been going on a regular basis. She was 2 months old. She had already been to the doctor 2-3 times for the feeding issue and her regular wellness checks. She had been to the ER. The paramedics even stated when they say the baby got to the hospital, nothing was wrong with the baby. They diagnosed it as gastritis. So we never would have thought that a person with no criminal background, never in any trouble, someone that has been described by everybody that got on the stand as a loving father, an active father, would have been convicted because he was at home, an in-home parent with his children, not someone visiting, not someone that got tired of babysitting. He lived in the home with them. He was there every day, all day.
And I want to go back to something that you said that makes perfect sense to me. Loving parents take their children on each and every well check. Believe that. And when they're first born, it's every 3 months that you take them in. You got to take them in within the first week, and then you take them in, I think, for the shots at a month, and then after that, it's like every 3 months, and then again at 2. So if the parents were doing that and there was never an issue, think about it. Think about how we went. And like I said, this is the second interview, second family that I do, that it just makes me wonder, how dare they, because it wasn't like he was knowledgeable, right, per se, of a lot of things. You're young, you're naive, mom is young.
Neither of them, because they weren't, what they're saying about her ribs, it wasn't even obvious to the pediatric doctor who sent them up there. It wasn't obvious to they didn't even notate it until 13, 14 days after the baby was there. If that was an injury when that baby arrived, why wasn't it found and said then?
And so when it comes to the fracture, and I'm going to look on my books as well, like just out of curiosity, do you know if it was something that they're saying that was past, or if it, according to them, it was something recent?
According to them, that was the only injury she still had. So that's why they beat every other charge. But they said that her rib was fractured then. But mind you, she was in the hospital still at that time. She still had not even come home.
So that could have happened at the hospital as well.
That's what both lawyers argued. Both lawyers brought that up in court and argued that injury wasn't even brought up until 14 days after the baby was there. It was argued that. Yes.
And I'm really curious, and I'm going to look and I'm going to ask to former colleagues of mine, if it's possible for there to have been a fracture even at birth, and that maybe they thought that it was something that just happened, because if there's a disability, if there's CP, there's other things, that could very well have been it too, that your body's not knowing, your brain's not saying, okay, heal. It's just saying it's okay, because remember, you got the spasticity, I don't think I'm saying it right, but you know what I'm saying, where they're kind of flimsy with the CP and stuff like that. So it just, I don't know, like, we really have to look into that just to make sure we have him covered in every way. And like I said, you have my full support. Unfortunately, the file that you sent me, I wasn't able to open. I tried opening it a few times, but we'll see if maybe you can email it to me or whatever, because I want to take the time to review all of that and actually maybe go back and just see, because you just never know. There could have been a number of things, especially, like, to me, the biggest argument is the fact that before the child was even born, they were already stating, her OB/GYN was already stating there may be something, and they still chose to come through and have their child and love their child and be that parent. And those children, I'll tell you, they're so sweet. I'm a mother of a special needs child. They can be handfuls at times when they have those meltdowns and everything, but they are the sweetest, most loving kids. And it's actually, our Father just blesses amazing souls. And I'm not saying it because of me. I'm just saying many other parents that I've met, amazing soul with amazing children. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Shawanda, if you can get anything from the listening audience, of course, besides sharing the story, please, and you guys, please share to any and everybody. Please, I would greatly groups, support groups, activist groups. I would greatly appreciate it, just because we want to make sure the story gets out. If there's anything that you can get from the listening audience, what do you ask of them?
I would ask first and foremost for their prayers. And then secondly, I would ask them to keep an open mind and to listen to the story that I'm telling. And I've had to tell it many times and it's never changed. I challenge anyone, if don't take my word for anything. We have documentation. I sent the copies to Miss Anna. She wasn't able to get it, but Demita's had it forever. And basically that was the only way she was going to take my case, because she wanted to be able to read transcripts and see for herself what was really going on. Again, I had so
That's
many
so
people.
funny, that's so funny that she said that to you, because that's one of my rules too. And we joke about it now, me and Demita. And the reason why, Shawanda, is because they would tell us, like, cases before now, right? Oh, I'm
Right.
innocent, right? And then we'd be like, okay, I'm gonna help. But then we started seeing stuff like like videos on social media, other people saying guilty. We're like, what's going on? So now, and it's kind of funny because we both agree on it. We both want to look, because a lot of times the people that are innocent, they have no problem with giving you the full transcripts.
And we did. We did. We gave her everything, because at that point I was just desperate and I needed help. And I had been an active member of NAACP for the last 3 years, and I reached out to them several times and they never even responded to me. I couldn't get anyone to help. I couldn't get anyone to listen to the story. When the local station posted it, they posted it on Facebook. And the heading was just, local man gets 20 years, 12 to serve for child abuse. Well, it wasn't aggravated battery. They didn't tell that he had 8 or 9 charges and he beat every charge, which I still don't understand how you can beat all of these charges, which are basically the same thing. You couldn't prove I abused the child, but you're going to charge me with aggravated battery. But that's, but to read, and that's why I had to get off of social media, because the comments, he's a monster. He should die. They should lynch him on the courthouse steps. Don't worry, he'll die in prison. He should die in prison. He's an animal. He's a demon. To hear all of those things just by people reading a headline and reading a story from someone that got it second, third, and fourth hand, that never saw his court papers, that never sat in the courtroom with us to hear the story. I was so disheartened, because it pretty much gave me a view on how most people would look at this story, because it's so sensitive as being a child. Because I would be one of those people that when it comes to a child, I'm ready to hurt anyone because you don't bother a child. But I couldn't get anyone to listen. And I used to tell people all the time, don't take my word for it. Just read the paperwork. See how he was done in court. See how they convicted him with no evidence. And Demita was the only person that ever said, okay, transcripts are going to be a little expensive. It may be over 1,000 pages. You may have to pay $1,000, but that's going to be important for me to look into it and see if I take this case. I prayed and I got those transcripts and I got them to Demita. She read everything and I started giving her every piece of information that I would have, pictures of the baby, things that was said in court. We tried to get other stuff from the court and they kept telling us they didn't have it available at the time. It wasn't ready. It was always a delay. But I started getting more and more people to listen and to read for themselves. So again, I would just challenge anyone to hear the entire story. Don't just listen to the news. Don't just read something and know that to be true. Courthouse documents can't be out. I didn't alter them. They were made by the stenographer. So everything that was said and done in that courtroom, it's all in black and white. And it's enough to make anyone cry, because it's evident that he was railroaded in that courtroom. And it just all boiled down to, I didn't have the kind of money to put behind him. Everyone there that was against him, they were all friends. They were high-fiving and they were happy and they were saying all these things. it was, it was election time, so they were all taking care of each other. I didn't have a dog in that fight in the courtroom. I walked in with prayer, and that's all we had. And I still believe my prayers have worked. I don't look at this as a defeat, because delay doesn't mean deny. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, I know one day it's still going to happen. They're going to have to vindicate my son. And they're going to have to pay for all this time that he was away from his family and going through all the things he was going through. I just would tell anyone, just, this doesn't necessarily have to be just my story. I think this is a testimony for everybody. This could have easily happened to you, a family member, a neighbor. At any point you had a child and you didn't know something was wrong, and you had a medical professional tell you to take your child somewhere because it was a little bit out of their league, and then you get somewhere and you get accused of doing something and you can't give answers because you didn't even know there was those type of issues. This is the case with them. Their lives were destroyed because they were just young. They weren't medical professionals. Their doctor didn't know, so they were never told, and they didn't know. And they're fighting for their lives. She's out, but she's still fighting. She still don't have her kids. She's done everything they require her to do, even after finding her innocent. They won't allow her to support him because they threaten her with her children. So it's his family fighting for him. We can actively fight because they can't do anything to me. So I rally and I go speak about him, and I write it down and I take notes, and I'm learning about the law, all the things that I didn't know the first time. I wish I'd known so much of this stuff before his trial, and I didn't, but I'm learning now. And I really think the whole purpose of this is not just for my son, but for every innocent person that's sitting behind those bars that have been accused of something that they did not do, that truly is saying, I didn't do it. If somebody's did something and they have evidence and you can read that in the documents, they're not going to tell you, go get my documents and read them. But I was happily sending those out, hoping that someone would just read this stuff and ask questions and found out what was going on. So I would just challenge the audience again, to just be careful, because this happens to a lot of us brown and Black people.
Absolutely.
And I just know for a fact that if it would have been different, and if they would have been a white couple, they would have been treated totally different. They would have been given the benefit of the doubt. Instead of the social worker calling the police and DFAC, sending them to their home, I truly believe she would have called and got the records immediately from the pediatric doctor, and before any of all this other stuff went on. I just feel like something happened in that hospital, and we don't know what, and we can't prove it. And of course, if they did it, they're not going to put it in their records. But again, I serve a God that can do all things. So I still believe that whatever happened is going to come to surface. And no matter when he comes home, I know that he's going to come home.
Amen.
I know that he's going to come home.
Amen. And Shawanda, please, I'm going to ask each and every one of you guys again, my Georgia brothers and sisters, Georgian brothers and sisters, if you are off from work, I know it's short notice, and that's why we did lunchtime with Anna today, and we did it at the time that we did it, because I wanted to make sure that it got up there ASAP as soon as we could, and I've been down, so I wasn't able to do interviews for anybody. But if you're free, drop by, even just give her a thumbs up, man. Just that. I'm asking you. Swing by, give her a hug. Just tell her I see you. I see your son. I see your family. Because as communities, we need to stick together. We need to support one another. Please share this interview. Share this interview. And it's not, I really want her son's story heard. When I tell you guys, one of the first shows that I did was on almost the same thing. To this day, the mother does not have a body for that other child. Allegedly, right? Because that's what they say.
Right.
But at the same time, mom never got that closure. Really don't have that closure. I'd love to look at those medical files because I'm really good at dissecting that. You know, that's what I went to school for. I went a few different times. Now I'm going to go into business. Like, I want to do new things every time. So anyway, but the more you know, the more you can help others. I'm a firm believer on that. I want to try to virtually be there. Are you active again on social media, or you're going to wait till tomorrow?
I'm gonna wait till tomorrow to
Okay.
reactivate because I've been fasting ever since Sunday. Just
Okay.
fasting and praying and preparing for Wednesday.
Okay. Okay. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll be looking for you to be on there. Are you okay with giving everybody your social media in case they want to follow your link?
Sure. My Facebook name is actually my name. I got married in January, so it's Shawanda Parker on Facebook, and that's my name is spelled SHWANDA Parker, and on Instagram I'm still Shawanda Morgan on there. And I am gonna go in. She said it starts at 9:30, but I'm gonna be there in the morning at 9 to see if there's a link. And if there's a link where you guys can follow along live, I'm going to post it on my Facebook page so you guys can follow along.
And what I'll do, guys, is I'm also going to share it on my page as well as my We For You Human Justice Organization page. And I will try to share as much as possible. So at least if they see a lot of people, or at least virtually, that's all I'm asking for. Just leave her a comment. Mom, I'm here. I couldn't be at court, but I support you and I support your family. And there's no greater feeling than us as communities sticking together, period. And I'm asking you as Mom is asking you. Mom, if you, so you have Instagram, you have Facebook, if there's another mother going through this, and I meant to ask you that earlier, and I know we've been on for a while, so I'm about to get off, but if there's another mother going through this, what's your advice?
My advice is to get a good support team. Get you Anna and a Demita.
Thank you.
Seriously, someone that is willing to listen with an open mind. Someone that will help you open up avenues. I was again given the opportunity to do this podcast. Demita invited me even at a Stop the Violence rally. I was able to speak and tell my son's story, so I gained supporters there. That's how I met Anna as well.
Yes.
We put a rally together for my son that I had in my city on Saturday, and I was out in the city hanging posters everywhere, and people were asking me what was going on, what were the posters for, and as I would tell them, they would say, okay, well, we're going to come by. So I got out there on my own, and I just, mothers, we have to be our kids' advocates. So just whatever you have to do to get the word out. I couldn't get any big media outlets to come take the story because I didn't have these hundreds of people, but I had my family all around me, and I had some great friends, and we let out a table, and we had ice, we had water, and we had coffee, and I put a podium out in the middle of a field, and I got on the microphone, and I just started telling my son's story, and people were walking from everywhere, just stopping, listening. Just whatever you have to do to get the story out, because your support a lot of the time is going to come from strangers. The more people you can get to hear the story, the more resources that will come to you. A lot of times we don't have those resources readily available for us, but if you can get your story out and get people to hear your story, that's the biggest thing. And if you can, don't wait until after the trial. We didn't meet Miss Demita until he had been sentenced and was in prison. Had I known all of this stuff and had I met her before then, there could have been so much stuff that I could have foreseen and we could have done a little bit different. But be vigilant. Be very vigilant no matter what anyone says. If you know the truth, then you fight. Amen. And you don't give up fighting regardless of what they say, because just because you don't move one person does not mean you won't move another person. And another person. And it's like a domino effect sometimes. Just keep pushing, but don't give up on your loved ones. If you know they're innocent and they're being accused of something that they did not do, then you just got to pray and you have to fight. The only thing I can say I've done is watched, fought, and prayed this entire ordeal. And a lot of times I don't even know where the help has come from or how it got to me. I just know I prayed for it and God sends it. So I would just say, just pray about it and keep pushing, but you have to put in the work too. You have to fight. I just wanted to always make sure that people heard his entire story, not the story that they told about him because they didn't know him. I birthed him and I raised him. So it was important for me to get his story out, for me to tell people and you guys who my son is, and what this has done and who he will be when he walk out of those gates. That was the most important thing for me.
And let me tell y'all something. She got Anna on her team, and my prayers are super heard. I'm not giving myself props, but man, there's not a thing I don't do without putting my father first. And Shawanda knows what I mean by that. So,
Amen.
I'm not giving myself no clout, but when it comes to my father's work, like that's first. I could be crawling and I will get up and I will do whatever you're asking me to do. And my father's like, I said, get up and walk. Even if you can't get up and walk and you go do this, and I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to sit there and be like,
win because we know who to give the glory to.
Amen.
And that's why I just still stand on this too shall pass. From,
Amen.
From being ill almost 9 years to pancreatic cancer and them telling me I wouldn't even live just 3 years ago, to fighting through that, from weighing 100 pounds just last year and not able to get up and move. And right now I'm still fighting. And a lot of people don't even know. I think we've discussed it. I'm fighting with a blood clot in my lung, a pulmonary embolism.
Yes.
And so a lot of days I can't breathe, a lot of days the chest pains, but you know what? I rest when I need to, and then I get up and move and I fight when I need to. I know God is never
And you look super healthy. All of our fathers were all around you.
When I say God is good, I truly mean that. And I won't let this make me waver in my faith. Again, when God said it's time to leave out of that prison, he's going to leave out of that prison, regardless of what man says. And that's what I'm going to stand on.
Amen. Shawanda, it's been more than a pleasure. And I want you to know something. My platform, you just give me a call and you're like, I want to give an update. Can you give me 30 minutes? I will get dressed and I will give you 30 minutes. I will give you that special because you need to continue getting it out. And I know that, my followers are really awesome. They like to do the right thing, and that's my followers. I always say I got the best followers, right? And I think we all think that about ours. But I want to make sure that you have, and that you have my support in everything that you do. And I really want to look at those medical records. So at your convenience, send that to me, and I don't care how big, how small. I mean, I've gotten cases like this, and I just sit there and I get ready with my glasses and my drink and my tea or whatever.
I'll definitely get those to you because I do know that the attorney, like I say, she had trouble getting them initially, but she had all of that stuff in court, so she has all of that. So yes, I'll be able to get those to you.
Okay, and I really
appreciate you didn't get the other paperwork that I sent to you last night, so I'll get your email and send that to you again as well.
Okay, sounds good. And like I said, anything you need, you just give me a call. And to each and every one of you guys, next week we'll be bringing in Angie, Matthew's mom. And that's another case that, whew. So if you guys want to hear it, tune in. I appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in short notice, but I had to get her story out before this court date. So please do it for me, do it for the family. Stop by, just give a thumbs up, or if not, tune into the video. That just shows support. God bless each and every one of you guys. I'll see you guys next week. Ciao. Thank you, Shawanda.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.